Well, last week we took a look at Lyle Menendez's chart, and today we're going to be taking a look at Erik Menendez's chart. Basically, we're very interested in these charts because of the recent Netflix series, and there's a district attorney that's looking at an appeal that the Menendez brothers filed about some evidence about the relationship with their father and some evidence regarding that could potentially lead to the release of the Menendez brothers if they get, for example, a resentencing or something like that. So today I'm going to be looking at the astrology chart. We're going to be looking at, for example, the relationship with the family, the mother, the father. We're going to be looking at the possibility of getting out in the near future. So this should be quite exciting. For those of you that are new to my astrology channel, make sure you like and subscribe. This is Vedic sidereal astrology, by the way. This comes from ancient India. I use something called a South Indian chart, which is a square chart. If you'll see it in a moment here when I put it up. My goal is 10,000 subscribers. We're over halfway, so thank you. And if you're interested in a personal private reading, we can look at the relationships you have with your families. Check down below, and I can do a live Zoom reading or pre-recorded readings if you email me. So check that down below. I also want to remind everyone that this astrology reading is for entertainment purposes only. All of my statements about Erik Menendez or Lyle Menendez, these are all my interpretation of the astrological charts. So let's go pull up Erik's chart. I'm just going to simply refer to him as Erik throughout the video. So let's pull up that chart. We're going to be talking about just a few basic personality characteristics in just a moment, but you'll notice that he's a Leo ascendant. Moon is in the sign of Scorpio over here. That's actually quite significant. That's going to come up a lot in this reading about Moon being debilitated in the sign of Scorpio. He's got Saturn in the ninth house. We will be breaking a lot of this down in just a moment here. Now, let's go back to the slide. For those of you that may have not seen my last video about Lyle Menendez, I just wanted to very quickly kind of go through the case just so you can kind of get an idea. Some of my subscribers said they hadn't actually heard about the case before. So basically, there was a series that just recently came out as of 2024, and it's called Monsters. It's basically about the murders of the parents of Lyle and Erik Menendez. And so what happened was Lyle and Erik Menendez were convicted of murdering their parents and were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So the crime took place, it was in 1989. So this is quite an old case. The first trial happened 93, 94. It ended in a mistrial. The series really goes into that quite a bit. The second trial took place in 95 to 96, and the series portrayed the second trial as a little more rushed. At least it was portrayed that way in the series. And so there's a lot of interest in this case. And then, right after this Netflix series, the Los Angeles District Attorney literally just came out, in October of 2024, saying that they're revealing an appeal. Now, the appeal apparently was made about a year ago or so. So it just happens to line up with this series, apparently, of the Menendez brothers. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the questions that we have in the astrology reading today. We're going to be looking at a few of the personality traits, family dynamics. What does Erik's chart indicate about the relationship with the father? That one was really important, especially when we're considering the evidence. There's some allegations about the father, the relationship with the mother, and then the possibility of being released from prison. We're going to examine some of those questions. So let's go ahead and pull up the chart for a moment, and then we'll go back into it. So I talked about Leo ascendant. Now, Leo ascendant people, they tend to be very noticeable when they enter a room. They have very bright auras. A lot of actors, a lot of Leo ascendants become like faces of brands. They become actors, celebrities. They have that very bright, kind of egocentric personality. However, in Erik's case, it's not as egocentric as you would think because K2's in the first house. So K2 actually makes somebody more selfless. They're more focused on others because Rahu is in the seventh house. So there's a lot of heavy marriage karma there for Erik. And I learned that Erik got married while he's been in prison. He got married in 1999, and he's been married to the same person ever since. So that's actually quite amazing. And Rahu in seventh house could show somebody that's, really interested in their partner. There's a lot of focus on that. There's a lot of karmic focus on that. The moon in Scorpio is going to be a very emotional placement. It is going to show some of the relationship with the mother as well, and we're going to be breaking that down. But these are a few of the placements. Let me put up the slide so we can kind of describe some of those issues. The other thing is the rising nakshatra that Erik has is Maga, and we'll discuss that just for a moment. So Leo ascendant, like I said, they tend to have a bright aura. They tend to be very confident, charismatic, regal, magnetic. I think my picture's blocking some of the words. Maga Nakshatra, they tend to be very magical, proud, commanding, very connected to their ancestral line. Okay, so whether we know it or not, Erik might be actually kind of sentimental. I know it's kind of a strange case, but maybe his greater family line, maybe he's interested in that kind of stuff. Like I said before, with K2 in the first house, this is the opposite of Lyle's chart, by the way. Remember in Lyle's chart, he had Rahu in the first house, which is more self-centered. Erik got K2. So this is kind of an interesting dynamic between the brothers. They literally have Rahu and K2 switched. So it kind of shows one more easily influenced, astrologically speaking. One could be more easily influenced. One could be more, the person with Rahu in the first house might be really good at convincing somebody that has K2 in the first house, like Erik has K2 in the first house. It's more definitely a lifetime more focused on others. Sometimes people that have K2 in the first house, like Erik does, they tend to have low psychic boundaries. They can maybe be very easily influenced by more dominant and assertive other people. So that's one of the downsides with K2 in the first house. K2 in the first house can make someone very intuitive and psychic, though. So he may actually have some very empathic abilities there. Rahu in the seventh house, like I said earlier, long-term partnership karma, married since 1999. Moon in Scorpio is debilitated, so there's definitely some emotional things going on there. There's intense emotions, jealousy, and control issues that come up, and a deep past life history. I've gotten a lot of clients recently that have Moon in Scorpio, and they tend to be people that have old souls. They tend to have a very long karmic history. When we talk about Vedic astrology, we're talking about reincarnation and many lifetimes. Also, with moon in the sign of Scorpio, Scorpio is a water sign. So if your moon is in a water sign, if it's in, Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer, you're going to be something called the educator archetype. Okay, now there's 4 archetypes, but this one, educator archetype. So he may, whether in the prison system or if he gets released very soon, he may go into something where maybe he teaches something, or maybe he helps, maybe he teaches. I'm just using this as an example, but maybe he sets up a program for kids that have been in difficult situations and he teaches about the subject. So we'll have to see there, but educator archetype would definitely be the focus. Now let's look at the family of origin, the second house. And I'm going to show you that right now with the astrology chart. The second house is what we look at when we look at somebody's family, especially like the family you grew up with. So that would be this house over here. So the second house of Virgo would be the house we're looking at. We examine that house. And then if we don't see really much going on in that house, which we actually don't, there was a lot going on in Lyle's chart, but not so much in Erik's chart. So what we do is we just look at what is the ruling planet, because in Vedic astrology, what's important is lordship. The ruling planet of Virgo is going to be Mercury. So the second lord is in the 4th house of Scorpio. So we can examine the second lord and get some information about the family of origin, the upbringing. Now, the second house, it does include a lot more things than family, but it's a very important family indicator. Let's go pull up the chart, or sorry, the slide, so I can point out some of those issues to you. So there's no harsh aspects on the second house. So we don't have a Mars aspect, we don't have a Saturn aspect. I believe we had some harsh aspects in Lyle's chart. I'd have to go rewatch my video on that one. However, we can examine the second Lord Mercury to get an understanding of the relationship. The first thing I want to bring up, just like he has Moon in Scorpio, he has Mercury in Scorpio, which right away there's the potential indications of family secrets. Okay, so family secrets are definitely highlighted with this. He's got Moon and Sun in Scorpio with Mercury. So we have a secret of mother, a secret of father, because that's what Scorpio can represent. There could be unresolved emotional issues or family dynamics that are not openly discussed, but strongly affect the family. And the series seemed to indicate, that there were these issues that are going on, and they allege that the mother was keeping things secret, the father was keeping things secret, and it was just kind of like this really bad situation within this family. The moon debilitated in Scorpio next to the second lord, because remember, moon is debilitated. This can represent a lack of emotional safety within the family dynamic. So whatever's going on, it doesn't necessarily feel emotionally safe from Erik's point of view. Now, if we just look at the second lord, it's not necessarily indicating like this mega difficult situation. It's showing there's some secrets. It's showing that there's a lack of emotional safety, but we're going to be seeing that there's some very heavy, strong, intense karma when we actually look at the house that represents the father. There's some very difficult, heavy karma there. And that's one of the chief allegations were with the father. He's got very heavy karma there. So we're going to take a look at that right now. So there's two things that we look at when we look at someone's relationship with their father in the astrology chart. And by the way, I'm just looking at the D1 chart. In Vedic astrology, we do use supplemental charts, but just for the sake of keeping this video within a reasonable time limit, we're just looking at the D1 chart. Okay, so this is called the D1 chart, which is like your main chart. So the first thing we would look at if we're looking at your relationship with fathers, we're going to be looking at the sun, and then we're going to be looking at the ninth house. Okay. He's got Saturn in the ninth house. So we already know right away there's some very heavy, difficult karma with the father. Okay. And not only is Saturn an oppressive planet by itself, but we also have Saturn's the sixth lord. So the sixth lord, it can be all of those bad things that you think about. It can be, lies, deceit, imbalance. In some cases, it can represent things like criminal actions, criminality, unethical actions. It can represent all those kind of things when we look at the sixth house. It's a very difficult house, okay? And then Saturn's a very difficult placement, especially for Leo ascendant. So this is like this right away, just with that Saturn placement, we know, okay, this is a very this is a difficult relationship from the point of view of the astrology chart. Let me put up the slide for you all so we can kind of break that down a little bit. Now, the sun, I'm not focusing as much on that. The sun is in Scorpio, so we know that the father is secretive. But there wasn't any actual harsh aspects to the fourth house where the sun is. But Scorpio can show, there's secrets there. But the major indicator is the ninth house. So the sun in the ninth house, you want to look at both. Both of those can represent your father equally. Just like the moon in the fourth house can represent the mother quite equally. So Saturn in the ninth house, major karma with the father. Saturn is also the sixth lord. Sixth lord can represent lies, deceit, criminality in some cases. Six from moon, we didn't talk about that. Let me pull that up on the chart because that is actually a really important factor. So if we were just looking at Saturn, we go, okay, somebody could have Saturn in the ninth house and maybe their father is just a jerk. Okay. But, we're having some really intense allegations here that the father was not a really good person. Now, If we got moon right here, we count six houses from moon. And this is called six from moon. And you can look at this in your own astrology chart, six from moon. This shows your emotional enemies in life. So the people that cause you emotional harm, of course, from the view of the astrology chart. So six from moon, we see it's the ninth. It's the ninth house. It's the father that's being indicated. So the one that causes the most harm, that's pre-programmed, in the incarnational script, the chart is essentially an incarnational script, is the father figure. So the father figure, this also can represent a father that's very oppressive, somebody that, sometimes it can represent just oppression, being suppressed by the father. It's really difficult karma. Uh, Now, the thing about it is Lyle's chart and Erik's chart both do show major issues with the father. So astrologically, there's definitely some heavy karma there. There's secrets in both of the charts. The father is heavily impacted either by Saturn, Mars, the negative planets that you would expect in a situation like this, they're affecting in both charts, which tends to support the narrative. Okay, because both of their charts are showing this. So that's very that's intense. Let's talk about the relationship with the mother. And so remember, the mother, we're going to be looking at the moon and the fourth house. Now, in this chart, if we take a look, and I'm going to show you here, moon is in the fourth house. So we're just kind of looking at moon, really. I mean, moon's in the fourth house. So that both of those represent mother. Now there's a couple focuses that I noticed with the relationship with mother. Now, I don't feel like it's as negative as a relationship with the father. Okay, but it does have issues in the astrology chart. First of all, we have to remember, and I told you earlier in the reading, that moon is debilitated in the sign of Scorpio. So that shows difficulty already. And then moon is within 12 degrees of the sun, which is causes a situation called combustion. It's combust. So moon is combust because it's close within that 12-degree orb where it can be impacting the mother, okay, or the moon in the chart. Now, it's interesting when we talk about moon in astrology. The moon represents your mother, but it also represents your own feeling nature as well. So it has that dual meaning. It even can represent things like homeland. So there's several meanings with the moon, but traditionally we usually look at the mother first when we look at the moon. Let me pull up the slide again. So moon, and the Sanskrit word for moon is Chandra. Now, moon is debilitated in Scorpio. We know that's already causing some emotional conflict within Erik's emotions because it's his moon, right? But when moon is debilitated in the Scorpio, there's trust issues with the mother. There can be a lack of emotional security around the mother. Remember, they kind of allege that the mother was holding this deep, dark family secret. So the mother was not necessarily being seen in a positive light within the series. So that was one of the difficult things. Moon is combust. That's the second factor we're looking at because moon is within 12 degrees of the sun. This can represent emotional suppression. One cannot express their feelings with their mother. Mother may be dismissive or invalidate a child's emotional expression. Tendency suppressed can be developed. Now, I don't remember in the series or not if the Lyle or Erik tried to talk to their mother, but the series kind of portrayed like kind of a mother that kind of knew what was going on, but just wasn't really going to stop what was going on. So that was what the series at least portrayed. Now let's talk about the likelihood of Erik getting out of prison because this is so relevant for everything that's going on. So we're really curious. And if these horrible things that Erik and Lyle say happened, I've had some discussions with people recently about this. When we think about the public consciousness in, say, the early and mid 90s versus the public consciousness now in 2024, people think a lot differently about these kind of issues. So people take this kind of issues I believe there's more sensitivity being brought to the issues nowadays than there was in the mid 90s. So even the district attorney had brought that up. There's a certain amount of sensitivity that has come, as several decades have passed. So, there tends to be a little bit more weight they put on if there's some malfeasance or some alleged misconduct in these kind of cases. It at least aids in, from what I understand, either the sentencing or what maybe they're going to be charged. So it's kind of a different ball game now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the chart. Sorry. So now there's a few things going on. I didn't talk about the Saturn transit, but I just noticed it right now. Saturn's in the seventh house of Aquarius right now. So we know, when Saturn's in seventh house, it can represent a frozen or stalled legal issue. So that's kind of interesting. A stalled legal issue, something's being reviewed. And this literally could be the district attorney that's reviewing things. And remember, they submitted the thing about a year ago. So it's being reviewed. We got Saturn there. Now, usually, if it's being reviewed, usually there's going to be a change. If, for example, they get released, it's usually going to be towards the end of the Saturn transit because it will be closer to when Saturn is going to be finishing its transit. And Saturn's going to finish this transit in March. So March 29th of 2025. Now, it could happen before, but usually you see Saturn kind of complete its karma with this situation at the very end. You may see it, or you may see it a little after the transit. So that's something to point out. And then when Saturn's in the eighth house, there's kind of shock. So for example, if he was released, with Saturn in the eighth house after March of 2025, there could be this shock. What they say is when somebody's been incarcerated for a long time, there's this idea of being institutionalized. It could come as a shock, being out in the world, being out in the normal society again. It could be very shocking. So Saturn in the eighth house would represent that because maybe he's, even though prison's not good, maybe he's kind of used to it. So he has to reacclimate to the new life. The other thing we're going to look at is something called the Vimshatari Dasha. He's in a period called Venus Jupiter. And we're going to examine both of those planets because we're going to look, can either of these planets bring somebody to be released from prison? So we're going to be looking at Venus over here, and then Jupiter's right next to Venus. The other thing I want to point out before we go to the slide is transiting Rahu, and the eclipses just happened here, by the way. Transiting Rahu's in the eighth house. It started that transit back in October of 2023. And it's going to be there till May of 2025. Okay, I don't know why I'm switching to numbers there. Okay, so the eighth house also has some important meaning as well. The eighth house can represent rebirth, which is really interesting. Let's go ahead and pull up the slide and we'll discuss it. We'll break it down a little bit more in the slide here. So the Venus Mahadasha, remember, there's a major period and then there's a sub period. So the major period is Venus Mahadasha, 2013 to 2033. Venus is generally a period of public visibility. Generally, one is liked. And for Leo Ascendant, it rules the third house and the 10th house. I didn't write that in the slide, but just so you know, Venus is going to help in legal matters because it's in the sign of Libra. So Venus is actually going to be very supportive of any kind of legal case or legal situation. It's in Libra, and this could actually be very beneficial for having someone's appeal being looked at. The next thing to look at, he's in Jupiter Antardasha, which is the sub period, which is the more acute energy from November 2023 to November 26. Now, the lordship of the planet is extremely important. So even though Jupiter's in the third house represents things like siblings, bravery, social media. So he's, they have been in social media. They got a rather large people following them. I don't know if it's their channel, but they've been talking a lot about the case on platforms like TikTok, and then obviously Netflix. So that would be third house type of narratives coming out. But we also look at the lordship. Okay, so Jupiter rules the fifth house and the eighth house for Leo Ascendant. So the fifth house, first of all, the fifth house can represent luck and fortune, and this is luck from previous lifetimes. And then the eighth house is such an interesting card because the eighth house can bring sudden reversals and resurrections. So somebody can have a rebirth, someone can be recycled. So something that you thought was so solid could be reversed during a period of the eighth house. The other thing to point out during the eighth house is more secrets could be revealed. So, right now, there could be more secrets about the case that are going to be released, which is going to change maybe the public's thoughts about this, but maybe even the court's opinion or judgment about what's happening. So Rahu is also amplifying the eighth house. So Jupiter's activating the eighth house because Jupiter's the eighth lord. And then Rahu's amplifying the eighth house because it's transiting the eighth house from October 2023 to May 2025. Now, I feel like there's a really good chance that Erik is going to be released. And since they're both brothers, I had the chance to look at Lyle's chart where the 11th Lord is being activated. The 11th Lord can represent being released from prison. In Erik's case, I do feel like there's a strong chance that he's going to experience a rebirth, and the rebirth could be, when we talk about change of identity with the eighth house, it can literally be becoming coming from inmate to just average citizen. So that's a change of identity, which the eighth house could represent. So having this inmate status and then going through an identity change where you're just a normal person again. So I feel that this chart is very positive for getting released very soon. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Let me know if there's any other charts you want me to look at. I'm going to be doing some royal family ones. So if you have a story about our chart of the royal family you want me to look at, comment down below as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.